So normally when someone's involved in an accident and their vehicle gets damaged, most people don't have a backup car unless, you have a spouse or you have other cars, but the majority of people don't have a backup car that they can just go and start driving. So the purpose of getting the property damage claim settled first is so that you can get compensated and go out and possibly purchase a vehicle. Now, a lot of insurance companies, whether it's your own insurance company or the other individual's insurance company, will provide you with a rental car. So that's something to make sure you ask about is, can you provide me with a rental car? And if so, how long are you going to provide me with a rental car? Because typically there's going to be time frames on how long they're going to provide a rental car for you. Most of the time it's going to be anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. And once that time expires, they're not going to continue to pay for the car. So if you can get that claim settled quickly, then it will be to your benefit, and then you can focus on the liability claim, which again is likely going to take much longer. In North Carolina, we are what's considered a contributory negligence state. And what that means is that if you are considered to be even 1% at fault in an accident, you can be barred from recovering anything. And it's a very strict statute, and a lot of times it prevents us from getting involved in cases because there's simply it's simply not worth the risk to pursue a case where your client was potentially at fault. Cases where you're normally going to see attorneys take cases where there is some possible contributory negligence are going to be cases where there are serious damages. And that's because the insurance company knows that there is a risk that if the case goes to trial, they potentially may have to pay out a lot of money, and they're going to be much more inclined to possibly negotiate a settlement in order to avoid paying out the full amount of money they may be required to pay out. Go ahead, Ben. I'll let you talk about the next two.
So the next two, 414 medical bills. 414 is just the evidence rule, but it's bills versus paid. What that means in short terms is this: when the North Carolina law says that the insurance company and the jury only need to consider the medical bills that are actually paid. So you often get a bill from the hospital immediately after treatment that is going to have the initial charges. It may be, maybe $20,000, but you have health insurance. So the health insurance has a different contract rate. They pay a lesser amount to that hospital. So what is actually being paid on your behalf that has to be paid back may be $5,000 versus the $20,000. So when you go to court or when you present this case, you're not allowed to say my hospital bill was $20,000 when that's not something that you had to pay. What you actually had to pay was the $5,000 that was paid on behalf of the insurance. So many times folks will come to us and say, well, I've got hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical bills, but in reality, they don't. And that is how the case has to be evaluated with respect to resolving the claim. And then finally, the UIM, which is underinsured motorist coverage, which is uninsured motorist coverage, and MedPay. These are things that you pay for on your own policy. And so they're things that you need to look at with or when you're evaluating what kind of coverage you are going to have, because these are the things that protect you, and that you can help prevent a situation where you owe medical bills if somebody else is at fault. So, for example, in North Carolina, as Brian said, the minimum amount of liability coverage that one has to carry is $30,000. So if you are injured in an accident and your bills or your damages exceed that $30,000, the most that you can recover from the other insurance company is going to be $30,000. If you choose, or if you decide that you don't want to accept that $30,000 policy, your other option would be to file a lawsuit in the case. But I'll tell you that most folks, filing a lawsuit is difficult, it's stressful, And it's not something that many folks want to do. And two, you want to file a lawsuit when there's a prospect of recovery on the other side. So if the individual that hits you does not have any assets from which you can recover, then you can file a lawsuit. You can pursue damages above their policy. But at the end of the day, you may only come back with a piece of paper saying you have a judgment against somebody that you really cannot collect on. So it doesn't do you any good with respect to putting you back in the position where you need to be. If you have underinsurance coverage, and we typically recommend at least a minimum of $100,000 of underinsurance coverage, $100,000 per person, $300,000 per accident. You can talk to your insurance agent about that. But what that does is it gives you coverage over and above that other party's liability policy. So if you and your family are in an accident and the damages far exceed the minimum limits that the other person has, then you can then look, rather than having to file a lawsuit and collect from the other person, you can look to your own policy to recover for your damages. And there's a number of different ways those policies can be used, but primarily that gives you additional protection in the event you're in an accident. And I'll tell you, when you talk to your insurance agent, but when you're talking to them, you're going to realize there's not much difference in the monthly payment or the yearly payment to increase that coverage. And so you want to make sure, as I said, that you have that. The other thing that you have is medical payments coverage on your policy. This is appropriate whether you are at fault or not at fault. But if you're injured in an accident, there's a certain amount of coverage that you will have under medical payments that can be paid out immediately to satisfy some of these bills, because these bills, the hospitals, the medical providers, they're going to still pursue collecting these monies, and they're going to pursue that from you. So you don't have you don't have the luxury of waiting till the case is resolved to then go back and try to pay those. Now, we can assist with that. A lot of times they'll establish a lien, and we can keep them at bay until the end of until the case is resolved. But most of the time, you're going to have them pursuing these quickly, and you are going to have you may potentially have collection agencies coming after you to recover for these bills. But it's good to have that coverage in the event that you are in an accident. And for those of you saying, well, what if the other party's at fault? Why should I be paying? Why should my insurance company be paying? Well, your insurance company more than likely is going to go back and try to recover this from the other party. They're going to try to recover what they've shelled out on behalf of that other party. But it takes you out of that equation so that you are not the one having to worry about the lost money, and you are protected. The other thing is it does not increase to collect on those policies, the underinsurance or uninsured. It does not increase your premium. So you're not going to see any rate increase because you chose to exercise that part of your policy. It's something you pay for every month, and frankly, it's what you pay for. So you're getting a payout as a result of that. But and then the other thing I would tell you on general information, Brian and I, most or a lot of these cases can be resolved without getting an attorney involved. Brian and I are very blunt and candid with our clients when they come to see us. If it is a case where we can have a consultation and tell you what you need to do, we're not going to tell you. In other words, every case that comes in the door, we don't say, yeah, go ahead and sign us up and pay us for our services. Many of these cases can be handled without an attorney, particularly those cases where you have a visit to the ER, you're fine, and you go on home. But it is still important to consult with an attorney so that you know some of the issues that are involved, and they can advise you as to whether or not you should get an attorney involved or whether this is something that you can handle on your own.
And then lastly, these are just some different areas that we handle in our law firm. Personal injury, again, that's going to involve what we talked about today, a motor vehicle accident where it's someone else's fault. It's also going to include other things like a slip and fall case. If you're walking through Walmart and there's a puddle of water that someone forgot to clean up and you slip and fall and get injured, then you potentially may be entitled to a recovery for that. Now, those cases are a lot more difficult than your motor vehicle accident type cases, but we've successfully handled a number of those, and that will just kind of fall under the personal injury category. Additionally, real estate, if you're buying or selling a house, if you're refinancing to get a better rate, which a lot of people are doing right now, then we can assist you with that. In North Carolina, you're going to be required to have an attorney at closing, and we'll be happy to assist you in any way with that. Estate planning, if you don't have a will, a healthcare power of attorney, or a durable power of attorney, those are things that we recommend to every client to have. And we can assist with that in either office. Criminal defense, if you get in trouble for anything, then certainly feel free to give us a call. That's going to also include traffic violations that are listed at the bottom, speeding tickets. If you get involved in any type of situation where you are criminally charged, then we can assist with that. Workers' compensation, if you're injured on the job, then that's another area that we handle. And then finally, business law. If you're wanting to create a business, get a business incorporated, or just have general business questions, contracts, things like that, then we can certainly assist with that. And the final thing I will tell you is if you have a legal question, always feel free to call us. We don't ever charge a client for calling to ask us if we handle a particular area of law. And the benefit of contacting an attorney, especially if they don't handle that area of law, they're going to know someone who does. And we can refer you to somebody that we know will take care of you and will provide you the necessary advice and competent advice so that you can be so that you can make an informed decision as to what you want to do.